While there are still many other races we could see about changing up, I think we have enough here to start piecing things together. Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. I was gonna do changing up fantasy cultures here, and this is still in a similar vein to all of that, but the whole idea and purpose with all this was to help with brainstorming, help get those creative juices flowing, and help people with doing world building and the like. And I hope I've done that so far. But since we've changed up about 7-8ish or so different fantasy races or species and their various cultures, giving them a fresh new veneer, I wanted to talk about actually using these things now and piecing things together, because this is actually a significant bit of world building that we've done already. Just changing up the 7 or 8 different fantasy races and their culture makes for quite a bit of detail for you to work from in creating something new. So the next step would be, after taking this handful and selection of races, would be making them neighbors and seeing how they interact with one another. But before we start talking about that, if you're new here to the channel, then go on down there to hit the subscribe button and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. Or if you've already listed yourself on such a legendary roster in spite of my hair getting all weird like this, then go on down there to hit the like button and share the video far and wide. But now let's actually talk about piecing the world together now. So we're going to just keep it to a relatively small number of what we've gotten so far. I want to go with the Landsnechkt Ogres, the Roman-styled Dwarves, and then the Greek city-states, the Spartan Hobgoblins. Maybe mix in a little bit of Macedonian in there, because those Macedonian pike formations, absolutely beautiful, brilliant, and definitely something that the Hobgoblins want to make use of. And we're going to throw in the Orcs for good measure there. And then we'll also have Warforged, but the Warforged are going to be a little bit more off to the side. They're not going to be the immediate neighbors. They're going to be the distant region that these groups try to trade with. So with the Hobgoblin Spartans, those Greek-styled hobgoblins, they live in these city-states. Women have a very powerful role within their society, and they have this disciplined, regimented society. And they, with these peerlessly trained warriors, and they also have these incredible phalanxes, and then the pike formations that they have as well for dealing with specifically larger enemies like the Ogres. The Ogres, styled after the Landsnechkt, are going to be further to the north from them, and they're going to have these great powerful bastions like what the different Germanic princes built for themselves all over the region of Germania. And the Dwarves are going to be further east in the mountains, with the great stone quarries and the beautiful, immaculate, just intensive levels of architecture that they built and that the Romans were also known for. And also the great political intrigues that they had as well, between the great clans and the political factions and these different families and the dynasties that they tried to set down. This is probably the only thing that will hinder the Dwarves in their dreams of expanding their empire outwards. That and, Landsnechkt Ogres off out to the west of them was definitely problematic. And because the Ogres are close enough to the mountains, they're still able to access different quarry sites and get the stone necessary to build their great defensive bastions, making it difficult for the Dwarves to actually dislodge and move against them. And one other thing I want to throw in there is with the Orcs, because the Orcs are a higher strength species on average, and that works really well with archery for them and bow use. They make great extensive use of the bows and engage in night raids against whatever opponents that they're dealing with, because of their dark vision and their ability to see, function, and operate at night much better than most of these other groups. This is how they help to keep things at bay. But because they're neighboring the Ogres, and the Ogres act as a buffer against the Dwarves as well as the Hobgoblins further to the south, they work and trade with the Ogres, and in specifically they trade their skill and ability as bow makers. Because they need to make higher strength bows for themselves, they understand the physics and the material necessities required for making ogre-sized bows. Now think about that. Just on a human war bow, you're looking at about 100 to 120 pounds draw weight, somewhere in there. Firing arrows that are thumb thick to deal with armor. The plate mail, the chain, and that little bit of padding underneath. That's a lot for those arrows to have to deal with and try to get through. Although they're not necessarily trying to hit the armor. They're trying to hit the gaps, the weak points, and deal with those flatter pieces of armor rather than the domed breastplate. But they want a lot of mass and energy in that arrow. And think of how that scales up, firing from a bow that is, built for an ogre. How much worse that gets. How much kinetic energy that puts out there. What kind of draw weight that has, 200, 300 pound draw weight possibly. Firing something, I don't know, that's wrist thick, firing javelins or spear-sized arrows at a target. That's an incredible thing, and also something that the orcs could trade. And given that the ogres have a habit of selling themselves as mercenaries, they have a great opportunity to have a working trade relationship with the orcs. And it's also an area where they don't have to really worry about fighting anybody. They can concentrate more of their forces to their east and to their south, dealing with the hobgoblins and then the dwarves. And who would they then sell their services as mercenaries to? Well, the orcs, obviously, that would be one group that they could work with, selling their abilities as warriors. But we have the great Mughal-esque empire of the Warforged out further east across the sea. Now, the Mughal Empire dominated trade in its heyday. Even towards the end of the Mughal Empire, they were still a massive economic force in India. I mean, in India, they're not far off from the Silk Road. They have spices, silks, all these other exotic goods to trade, and nobody else really had anything interesting to offer them. So this is something that the ogres can offer, is their prodigious size and strength and capability as mercenaries. This is something that the Warforged would see as potentially valuable. Yes, Warforged themselves are very strong, not requiring anywhere near the same degree of rest, and really just, extensive maintenance at worst, to bring up the worst of their casualties back into fighting shape. But even still, having potent, capable mercenary forces like that is still a valuable thing. Not only that, but these are mercenary forces that are familiar with other potential trade partners like these dwarves and the hobgoblins. So it's something that they can use as a little bit of leverage, and then could go, oh, well, the ogres, they always cut us a pretty fair deal, and we get to use their strength and labor as a fighting force. It really helps to free things up. Not only that, but their experience with building fortresses, these great bastions and redoubts. Look at how much it's strengthened our walls. Do you really want to try to press things right now with us? And so we get all these different political, economic, and trade intrigues going back and forth just between these 5 separate nations. And that already sets the scene for a lot of different things for you to throw at your players. And some of you might be wondering or asking why I didn't do anything with humans yet. It's because humans are always adaptable. They come in a wide variety of cultural flavors, and no matter what the setting, they're always able to fit in there between the cracks or just utterly dominate the space, whatever the setting or the homebrewer decides that they want to do with them. So humans can fit in more or less wherever on all of this. And so you can still present all of this as a unique, distinct, interesting setting, and this is all how you can start to build all of this together, by imagining how these different groups interact. And by imagining how they interact, that also informs the different cultural impacts that has within each of these individual societies, because the dwarves, they want to expand their empire, but the ogres present a pretty significant threat, and then the hobgoblins themselves do as well, because they're also a disciplined fighting force. And damn, those pike formations are difficult to deal with, and even the ogres find that troublesome as well, which is where the Landsnechkt come in, because the Landsnechkt were famous for dealing with those extensive pike formations during their heyday, and great sword infantry going in, potentially, as far as we understand it, to help break up the pike formations and start creating openings for other Landsnechkt to fill the gap with. On and on and on. So these interactions get to really build on top of one another and go back and forth. And I could probably keep going on and on about this, imagining all these different details kind of trickling in. But I hope that this helps to inspire you to build your own worlds and start imagining all these other little details here, and just kind of start piecing things together, getting that Lego set going, and just building up this intricate little world of your own for the players to explore. And by putting the Mughal Empire or the Mughal Warforged across the sea, we can have them on a separate continent and avoid that one major pitfall that happens with a lot of world builders, myself included, from time to time, is that it keeps you from focusing solely on developing one continent. By putting a couple of these different cultures on one continent and another on a separate one across the sea, across the ocean, this helps to kind of move and shift things a little bit and allow you to build up different areas to make your worlds feel that much wider and that much more open. But what do you think? Go on down to the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Did you like today's video? Did you dislike it? Is there anything that you would add, or any of your own thoughts or ideas that you've come up with just from watching this? Please feel free to also make use of this. The whole point of this is to try to help you all build better worlds, more interesting worlds. Not that anything you've built hasn't been interesting. I just like to try to offer different insights, different looks at things, and just try to help my fellow gamers and DMs out. But let me know your thoughts down below. Hit those like or dislike buttons, and if you're new here to the channel, remember to go down there and hit that subscribe button. But with all that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time, and you all have yourselves a good night.